A fantastic leader in the House of Representatives. He is a physician. He served at Johns Hopkins Hospital. He was a medical officer in the Naval Reserve. He's been a state senator from his great state of Maryland, and he's a tremendous brain on so many different issues. And I welcome Dr. Andy Harris to the program. Thanks for joining us.
Well, good to be with you, Jody.
Well, listen, it's my honor, and I want us to talk about the Equality Act and to kind of get this teed off for both of us. I have a clip here from, a couple of clips. Let's begin with the one from Biden.
You deserve a partner in the White House to fight with conviction and to win the battles ahead. Together, we'll pass the Equality Act.
We will pass the Equality Act, and then we have a clip here from the Vice President, Kamala Harris.
So that's where the federal government must step in. That's why we have the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. That's why we need to pass the Equality Act. That's why we need to pass the ERA, because there are moments in history where states fail to preserve the civil rights of all people.
Wow. All right. So that was obviously in the debate for the presidential nomination. And here we go. Andy, let's first of all just kind of define, what are we talking about when we make reference to the Equality Act?
Well, Jody, I think it's misleading, because what it's basically doing is sold as a bill that says we shouldn't discriminate against people based on their sexual identity or sexual orientation. But in fact, this goes well beyond that. We know that the Supreme Court's already said you can't discriminate for those reasons. This is basically a pro-abortion bill. It's it goes against religious freedom. It goes against the rights of people to actually have a belief that's different from the commonly held or some commonly held beliefs that liberals hold. This is a very, very dangerous bill that goes under an innocent moniker of the quote, Equality Act. Look, we all want equality, but that's not what this bill is about.
It's amazing how the Democrats are so good at putting names associating with various bills that, beyond the name, are absolutely radical to the point of transforming our culture, our society, our entire nation. Would you place the Equality Act as one of those type of bills that has that kind of devastating effect if it actually becomes law?
Oh, absolutely. There's no question about it. It completely upends the entire relationship between, the federal government and the abortion industry, the ability to restrict abortions, the ability to restrict abortion funding, the ability to allow people with deeply held religious convictions not to participate in these. That's whether it's a provider or a hospital. The Little Sisters of the Poor they'll basically have to fund abortions if this bill goes through.
Well, and not only those, and those kinds of concerns are enormously important to every one of us who are part of this program this evening. But I mean, even beyond the abortion issue, there's so many other ramifications with this. For example, I mean, one of the things that I hear about a lot of concern from people is that this bill would force schools or businesses or what have you to open female showers and bathrooms and sports teams and all this type of stuff to men who somehow identify as women, and vice versa. I mean, what kind of impact does that have on a country?
That's absolutely right. Look, it turns common sense on its head. The fact of the matter is that a lot of families, mine included. We have a daughter who's a female athlete. She had a track scholarship. The bottom line is she would never have been able to get that if the Equality Act was in place, because men identifying as women would be competing in those sports. They're obviously and I can get into it as a doctor for all the reasons why. You can say if you're a man, you can say you're a woman. Even if you take hormones, you're past puberty, you are going to have increased muscle mass. You're going to have increased cardiac abilities. There are a lot of changes that don't get reversed. So women's sports will be, and that pathway for a lot of families to have their daughters get a college education will be gone forever. Someone mentioned, when my daughter went and traveled with the track team to other states, there'd be 4 girls in a room, sharing a hotel room because you got to minimize cost. If the Equality Act passed, you could put a transgender woman who was born a man into one of those rooms, to share a room, to share that hotel bathroom with them, and you couldn't discriminate against that person. We would have to do it according to this law. That just goes against all common sense. It goes against everything I think that America stands for, the ability to have deeply held beliefs, again, religious beliefs, and to not have the state interfere with that. And in this case, I think it just goes against common sense.
Well, it goes beyond every imaginable common sense. Jody Hice filling in for Tony Perkins today on Washington Watch. I have on the phone with me now Dr. Andy Harris from Maryland, fantastic congressman, a tremendous representative in so many ways, and he serves on the powerful Committee on Appropriations. But with this Equality Act, I mean, I think it's so important for people to understand. You mentioned it doesn't matter how many hormones a person takes. It doesn't matter if they have reversal type surgery, all this type of, at the end of the day, the DNA does not change. A male is a male, female is female. Am I correct on that, Dr. Harris?
Look, that's absolutely right. Yes, in a very, very, very tiny number of people, they are not 46XY or 46XX. They can be an intersex, but it's a diminishingly small number of people. What we're talking about are people who are chromosomally man or woman. Now they have a new term. It's called sex defined at birth, but we know actually sex is defined way before birth, because when you go to get that ultrasound and you're at 20 weeks or 22 or 23 weeks, you get the report back and it says this is a boy or this is a girl. It doesn't say this is whatever you want it to be. The fact of the matter is that God has decided what you're going to be. You've got a genetic chromosomal makeup. And to pretend that it's anything else is just pretending.
It is pretending, and it's impossible to change that which is God ordained from conception and beyond. So let me just throw this out to you, because I certainly believe this. I want to get your thoughts on it. By redefining the meaning of sex that the Equality Act does, what we're doing, we no longer guarantee equality opportunity, as you mentioned earlier, for individuals like your daughter, female students in academics or athletics. The Equality Act really produces inequality. Is that an accurate description?
That's absolutely right. There's so many instances, so many things that are just wrong with this. For instance, there's actually pretty good data that single-sex high schools, high schools where they're just boys or high school where they're just girls, you actually have a better academic outcome in those settings. That would be all tossed into the wind with the, quote, Equality Act. You couldn't have that anymore. There are just so many ramifications of this. It defies common sense belief. But we're on the cusp of this passing the House. It passed the House of Representatives last Congress. The only thing that stopped it from becoming law was the Republican majority in the Senate, which we no longer have. So there's a chance that this very, very dangerous bill will actually become law. And for those, again, as a physician, I'll put my physician hat on. Under this bill, and I probably, or any physician, would not actually be able to counsel someone who thought they had, what we call gender dysphoria. You make that counseling illegal, and worse than that, it would take away the rights of a parent to have a decision on what their minor child, if a minor child wants to cross over to the other sex, become a transsexual, then it takes away parental rights as well. I mean, this is just loaded with booby traps.
Unbelievable. Let me pull into our conversation now FRC's Vice President for Policy and Government Affairs, Travis Weber. Travis, thank you for joining us. I know you've been listening to this discussion, but thanks for being a part of it.
Thank you.
Well, let me get your input on all of this. You follow so many of these different policies and the way these things may impact the American people. Is this one kind of slipping in under the radar for most people?
Well, hopefully not, because this one, compared to a lot of the issues that we deal with on life, family, and religious freedom, this one is particularly egregious. It impacts all those areas. It would expand abortion access, as has been noted, through the tampering of the definition of sex non-discrimination. It would infringe on women's rights, women's safety, women's privacy, and their ability to compete in sports fairly. To say nothing of the religious freedom impact in a host of different areas affecting nonprofit institutions, churches, businesses, and others. And so, really, when you look at the breadth of this, the fact that it's dealing with all those different areas impacting the rights of people of faith to live out their beliefs and moral convictions in all those areas, and very real public matters like safety and privacy, this bill really is a problem. And it's a more significant problem than a lot of other measures that we face. And it's important that people are aware of it and they make their voices heard, because this really would do damage if it's passed.
Well, let's go down that path real quickly. I mean, this is the Equality Act is one of these things that we're talking about gender perception, not reality. It's all perception, which absolutely denies scientific facts, chromosomal facts, as Dr. Harris brought up. All these types of things, and people out there right now are listening saying, how in the world can this actually be on the doorstep of our nation? How can this be happening? And so I know there's people thinking right now, what in the world can I do to help make a difference as this legislation is being kicked around in Congress? So Travis, how would you answer that to people who are wondering now, what can I do to help?
Yeah, the easiest thing to do, go make your voice heard to your member of Congress. We have a easy link at frcaction.org/Equality Act, frcaction.org/Equality Act. It has a message there that you can send to your member of Congress, because, as you noted, this thing is bad, and it's bad in terms of the ideology it's pushing, the ideology of gender identity that is being implemented and injected into a host of different areas through the bill. One we haven't talked about yet, healthcare. Healthcare, by forcing gender ideology requirements on a number of different healthcare policies, this bill would harm the very members of the LGBT community that it claims to want to protect and claims to want to give equality to. There have been instances in which the healthcare, the attempts to treat a member of a biological sex, the instances that we've identified, a biological woman showing up for treatment appears to be a man and not able to receive care quickly because of the obvious perception of the medical staff that this is a man they're looking at when in actuality it's a woman, and care is affected. So to say nothing of the conscience rights that have already been discussed throughout healthcare, and the way this would implement and further advance that ideology, a host of different other areas, a significant problem, and it's important that people know about it and make their voices heard, which they can do at our link at frcaction.org/Equality Act.
Fantastic. Back to you, Dr. Harris. From the legislative perspective, this bill literally, and I think we need to underscore, it forces, this bill, if it becomes law, forces all of society to pretend that a biological male claiming to be a woman is indeed a woman. I mean, we will be forced as a society to accept that kind of distorted perception, correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And again, it doesn't matter what your professional belief is. If you're a physician, doesn't matter what your religious belief is. It will force you to do it in America.
Which has all sorts of complications and consequences associated with it. If a person does not comply with that, they would be accused of infringing on that other individual's civil rights. I mean, the ramifications of this as it relates to religious liberties, houses of faith, nonprofit organizations with Judeo-Christian values, or whatever the case may be, they're all going to be impacted by this, wouldn't they?
That's right, because for instance, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act is not specifically, in fact, is specifically excluded in this bill. So the protections that normally would protect you under a lot of these circumstances are very specifically and intentionally omitted from this bill. So the purpose is pretty clear. It's a major overhaul of the way we approach sex, gender, identity, and sexual orientation in the United States in a very oppressive manner.
Unbelievable. So let me come back to you, Travis, as we kind of wrap up our time together here. This has got to be alarming to people as they're hearing what Dr. Harris just said and how this is literally going to be forced upon American society to accept this gender perception that is what we all know inaccurate. But the religious liberty ramifications of this are alarming. Where do you see this ultimately in lawsuits, courts? What happens? And we've got about 40 seconds left.
Yeah, I do think we're going to see challenges to this if it passes. Hopefully it won't be, but it'll be challenged under First Amendment and other grounds because of the incredible violation of our constitutional rights. It not only guts RFRA, but it would infringe on the autonomy of religious institutions, including churches, possibly forcing them to alter their practices and use of their facilities. And it would be an incredible infringement. So I do think we can't see this passed, and we have to pray and make our voices heard, ensure that it's not passed.
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today.